While you will be elected by the voters of D5, you will represent and vote on issues that affect all the students in Austin. How are the lives of our most underserved students improved by the work that you've done?
That's a great question. Thank you for asking it. I think we can always do more, right? I could do more, but I have dedicated my life to making sure that I am helping people. And so whether I am working with kids who aren't getting the education that they need, or working at SAFE to make sure that we're stopping abuse for everyone, I feel like my view on life is that we are here to help other people. And so what that means is that I'm a listener. And what that means is that when I am taking into account the needs of kids across the district, I'm going to listen to what the needs of D5 are. And I am going to listen. I'm going to go to each of those schools. I am going to hear from the teachers and the parents and the staff and the kids, find out what it is that they are experiencing. But I'm also going to do that with non-D5 schools. And I want to make sure that when we're making decisions for the district, that we are taking into account the very, very special needs and the special concerns of the schools in D5, but that as a board of trustees, we're making decisions that work for every kid. A rising tide raises all boats, and I feel really strongly that that's how decisions need to be made.
Thank you. A follow-up to that is, specifically, what have you done? I know we've talked about the larger picture, and I'm glad to hear about all the great things that you're planning on doing, but what specifically have you done, if you can think about it, that has directly impacted students on a campus?
Well, I've always been active on my kids' elementary school. So whether it's working in the library, whether it's working on the PTA, whether it's working on some sort of carnival, which always requires way too much time, right? That's work that I did. And I'll be honest, I think that's important. I'm so impressed with volunteers. It's not my favorite thing. But what I did love is that we had a partnership with a school, another school, and I really enjoyed working with that PTA. I enjoyed talking with them about what their needs were, how we could work, creating cross-cultural exchanges with their school, helping them with fundraising, helping them figure out how they get parents involved. That I really loved. And I think that made a difference. I think that when I think about their, I think a lot, it turns out, when I think about their track and field day, they were struggling with finding the resources to make sure that every kid got water and snacks for that track and field day. And we helped them figure out how to do that. We didn't provide it, but we helped them figure out how to make that happen. And I feel good about that.
Thank you so much. The same question, excuse me, over to Lynn. The question is, while you will be elected by voters of D5, you will represent and vote on issues that affect all students in Austin. How are the lives of our most underserved students improved by the work that you've already done?
Sure, thank you, Candace. I will say anyone who's lived in other cities in Austin knows how unusual it is to have a district that has families across the economic spectrum. So I grew up in San Antonio, where there are wealthy districts and far less wealthy districts, and it's either or. That's where a lot of the lawsuits over our school funding system came from. So I believe it is a real strength in Austin to keep families who are middle class and upper middle class in our district, but not to have a system of schools that work for some and not for others. That's what I've been doing for 5 years through the Austin Council of PTAs. I have been deeply involved in my own children's schools, on PTAs, on CACs, and also at the district level. It's why I feel like I'm the best candidate for this position, because I have been that bridge. I do understand both sides. And I think it is essential to continue to put things on the scorecard that hold our district accountable, to measure and make sure it's happening, to engage our community, to make sure that our leaders honor what every family brings, to recognize that even families who need have a great deal to give. No one wants success more for students than families. And when we engage families, when we take the time to build community, when we put that on the scorecard and measure that among many other things, we have power. We have success as a community. I also feel like it's very important to engage not-for-profits, to talk with our city about what we can do to make our city stronger. We talk about the enrollment crisis, we talk about why people are leaving. If we work in neighborhoods with under-enrolled schools, we work in neighborhoods that are gentrifying to build truly affordable housing in collaboration with our community, that's a source of strength, and that brings equity to our district. I think the most important thing is that we do all of this with the expertise in our community, not for people. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Lynn. You mentioned the scorecard. So we're talking about those, how the lives are impacted directly of those underserved students. What type of items specifically would you put on that scorecard to ensure that these students are meeting, like you said, the equity and these things are getting done?
Sure. I think we need to put on the scorecard a measure of who's leaving and who's not. You know, are you losing families on your campus, and have an understanding of why? Often that goes hand in hand with people who are losing teachers, with a climate that isn't working for families. I think we need to look at, you know, are you closing the gaps? I think we need to have a really honest look at discipline and how that fits in with students with learning differences. I think we need to really look honestly on the scorecard at measures like teacher turnover. I think these are symptoms of a school that isn't working often. And I think if we figure out, we have a lot of smart people. We are not the only city with this issue. I think if we work with our community to figure out what isn't working and where our schools aren't working, and compare those to schools that are, and find those measures, then we can create a strategic, thoughtful scorecard that really gets us where we need to be and holds people accountable.
Thank you. Jennifer, I'll read the question again. While you will be elected by the voters of D5, you will represent and vote on issues that affect all the students in Austin. How are the lives of our most underserved students improved by the work that you've done so far?
Thanks, Candace. So I have the unique perspective in this race, and that I'm the only person running here whose children have been in diverse schools. My children attended an elementary school that was a majority students of color. There are hundreds of economically disadvantaged students at Patton Elementary. There's a strong community of families who are not native English speakers, of immigrants. And I have seen what it takes for the community to come together and ensure that every family feels a part of the school community and feels valued. And that takes it takes a macro and a micro approach. It's everything from challenging when a principal says families have to pay $25 to come to the school talent show, to the larger issues of making sure that like I said before, when I talked about making sure that every student is being has access to advanced academics and is getting the opportunities that they should. It's also making sure that students are identified for learning differences. And my own children have received dyslexia intervention services. It was through strong advocacy on my part. And one thing that I have done in my school is making sure that those programs are strong and that teachers and principals are committed to them, so that every student will have access to them. I have also served on the 2017 bond campaign, which led to a historic investment in East Austin, rebuilt T.A. Brown, we rebuilt Go Valley, rebuilt the original Elsie Anderson campus that will now be the right size East Side Memorial.
I'm glad you mentioned the 2017 bond. I do have a follow-up question for you. The question that we're asking this evening is how the work that you've done so far has impacted the lives of children who are in underserved communities. Talk to me about the 2017 bond and its impact on underserved children, and the benefit that they received from that.
Absolutely. That's one of my favorite things to talk about, so I'm happy to do that. There is tons of research on the impact that better facilities have on teacher retention, on improved academic outcomes for students. Our new campuses have everything from outdoor classrooms, natural light. They're completely ADA compliant, and they have breakout rooms that really allow teachers to provide individualized instruction, whether that is remedial or advanced work. It allows true differentiation in the classroom. It also lets our classrooms be more inclusive for our students with special needs. The data is really clear that our improved facilities help with teacher retention, and they also, on the fiscal side, it also saves us dollars that we then get to put into teaching and learning. AISD.
I have a follow-up.
I told you I could talk about that all night.
This follow-up question, I'm going to actually open it back up, and you will have 1 minute to answer, and anyone who wants to answer may do so. Just signify, and we can go in whatever order. So the 2017 bond, again, was mentioned, and the question is about how underserved students in our community are impacted. 2017 bond sent more money west than it did east. Yes, there are underserved students west, but there are a greater number east. What is your plan to prevent this from happening again as a trustee member? How do we allocate? We all allocate those resources. We're all speaking about equity, but having more money go one direction than it is the other when there's a greater need, that is definitely not equitable. So anyone who would like to, you have 1 minute and you may respond.
For me? So talking
anyone
to me?
who would like to respond.
Oh, okay. So I'm not sure where you're drawing the line of East and West. The bond actually spent significantly more money in East Austin on a per student basis. And again, depending on where you draw the line of East and West, a lot of those campuses in Richard School, Menchaca, they may be west of I-35, but the student populations are predominantly Black and Brown students, predominantly low-income students. Rosedale is a campus that is west of I-35, and that's our campus that is 100% students with medically fragile students. So just looking at the dollars spent west of 35 versus east of 35 is not necessarily an accurate picture of whether or not our most vulnerable students are being served.
Thank you so much. Would anyone else like to respond? You would have 1 minute if you'd like to respond. We will move on to our next question.
Candace, I will say, I think the fact that there was such strong support for that bond is something that we can learn from, but I do think that is part of what our equity audit needs to look at, is where money is being spent, how buildings are being managed. I will say, my daughter was at Cassis when the roof collapsed one year in a big rain, and a whole wing of the school had to be closed. So I do think there are needs everywhere. I also know that there was a lot of deferred maintenance in East Austin schools for a very long time, but I do think it is really important to think about the Eastern Crescent, schools in the north, schools in the south. Our needs are many places, and I think we need to really think about the needs north of 183, the needs near Aikens, the needs all over our community as we talk about where we're spending money on a bond in the future to keep that balance that gets that strong support community-wide.
Thank you so much.
And I would also, I would add that I think that it's up to the community and to parents to really do more research on what's happening and where it's happening. I certainly didn't do that. I didn't do that research. And so I think that moving forward, the school district needs to be more transparent about where that money is being allocated, about how bond decisions are being made. And parents, I'm asking parents and I'm asking myself to do a better job of looking more deeply into what's happening there.